Hey, everybody. I'm Garrett Reisman.
And I am Mike Massimino.
And we are two funny astronauts, or so we hope.
So we hope. And again, we are not saying that we are funny at all.
No.
We are not claiming to be funny, but for us, we're as good as you're going to get. We are the funniest astronauts ever. That's what we're saying. Hold us against. Yeah, that's the astronaut threshold.
Right.
That's what we're looking at.
And today, in this episode, we're going to be talking about SpaceX Dragon launching crew to space. The new world of human space flight in commercial space.
Yes.
So you were just at the launch, Mass, right?
Garrett, it's fresh in my mind. I was there. It was I was invited to this launch. It was interesting as a family member from my space sister, Megan MacArthur, one of my best friends. I think she's just great. She's you know Megan, of course. And she invited me to be a family member, and my son Dale and I went.
She invited you to be a family member?
To be a family guy, a family part of her family. You can't really invite someone to be a family member. Thank you for correcting. A family guest. So I was on her family.
I thought maybe she wanted you to marry her sister or something.
Let's not start with that. Okay, let's not even try to be funny with that one. They're a very wonderful family.
They're wonderful.
And I wouldn't want to insult them. But I was an honorary family member. Let's put that. I was on her family guest list. Have you ever gone to a launch as a family guest, as opposed to, the way we would normally view a launch or be on the spaceship itself?
No. I went to a bunch of launches in official capacity as family escort, but not as a family, not as a guest. Well, that's not entirely true. We, I remember we went to the final space shuttle launch. They invited a lot of us. You were probably there for that too. STS-135, the very last space shuttle, and we were basically invited guests of the crew. And we were on a big bus together, and we went to and all that. So kind of, But what was it like for you?
Yeah, no, it was a little different to be like there amongst and usually when we went as astronauts, we were we were a little more careful maybe about the quarantine, or we were more it was working, and this was going there, just to enjoy the launch and be with the other family members and the other guests and see a lot of our friends down there. It's a little nerve-wracking because there's like a lot of things so you got to figure it out on your own. When we were astronauts, they would tell us what to do. You're supposed to be here at this time and over here and everything else. It's kind of open-ended. Like you don't really get all the information you need, and you got to remember. I remember people used to hound the crew secretary. We had one of my high school friends ban his wife from all federal property. Because this woman was such a pain in the neck. She was she was going like, what is going on now? When can I go to Disney World? She kept calling. Brooke Heathman was our.
I remember Brooke. Yeah,
remember Brooke? She was our. This is my first launch, and this woman was driving her crazy. I mean, it was like saying like 90% of her time, constantly calling every day, multiple times. What can I do about this? Can I do this? What about that? And so I was like, you're banned from the Kennedy Space Center. So that was it. She wasn't allowed ever. She came to that launch and that was it. The second time I flew, I didn't invite them, but I invited their parents because their parents were friends with my parents. The parents tried to give the tickets to the kids so this woman could get back inside.
Oh, no.
And I said, no. So we had
to
ban this. But I kind of have more appreciation for don't know what the heck's going on.
Yeah,
and it's kind of stressful. You're trying to figure out what's going. And it's there's a lot of activities, and what do you do? And they don't tell you what to do. You kind of have to figure it out a little bit on your own. And you're nervous about the crew member. It's like, ooh, I hope they're going to be okay, kind of thing.
Yeah,
a little bit different, perspective.
I tell you, Matt, I remember as a crew member, this whole guest list thing is really stressful because, like, I remember my first launch, I think I had like 2,000 guests. 2,000 and there's all these different like tiers. Like you can be like, so the best tier was like at the by the visitors or the Saturn
Banana
V
Creek
Center there, the Banana Creek.
Yep.
And then there's like there's the people that sit on the causeway, and then like the lowest tier is like the bar in Cape Canaveral, like the little fish and chips place with the balcony.
And God forbid these people find out that someone else got a better seat than they did.
And it's like oh my God, it's like that old brain teaser about the fox and the bag of seed and the chicken. And it's like because Uncle so and so can't stand Aunt such and such, and you can't let them sit in the same place, so you got to make sure they're separate, and you got to it's so freaking complicated.
That I can relate to, relatives hating each other. I'm not sure about the fox in the sand. I don't know what that's about.
Well, but I remember that people ask me when you're sitting in the rocket and you're strapped in, okay, and you don't know, by the way, when you get into a rocket, you don't know if you're really launching on that day, because historically,
this is true
with the shuttle, there's only like a 50% chance on any given launch opportunity that you're actually going to go, because it could be bad weather in Spain. There could be like a technical problem with some ball bearing could be missing. There's a million things that could stop you from launching on that day.
You might want to explain the bad weather in Spain, because that's something I really didn't realize until. Why would that stop the launch? Because it's the same thing for the space, sort of. Go ahead.
It is. So like you have to, in the event that you have an emergency, if you lose one of your engines at a certain point in a trajectory, the plan is to abort across the Atlantic. It's called a TAL, transatlantic landing. And you're going to go and fly over the Atlantic and land like in Spain or France or someplace in Europe. That's your option. And so if the weather is bad there and the shuttle can't land, you're not going to go launch, because that option will be taken away from you. So there's all these factors that go into it. Like there's a million different things. And so you don't know.
Yeah.
But then like just before launch, they go around, they do the go, no go poll. And it sounds like this is like Booster, you go. And he goes, go. Like, GNC, are you go? I'm go. Range, are you go? Go. And then and when everybody says go, that's the moment that today you really are going, right? And
as long as the rocket lights.
Yeah.
Because they did have a couple of shutdowns on the pad. Jim Newman, the guy I flew on my first flight, said he always he went out to the launch pad and he aborted every time. He was 3 for 3. We did go on time. That's another story.
That's true. But that's extremely rare.
They had a shutdown, an engine shutdown. They started the main engine and shut them down. So
that's right.
You never know.
But usually once everybody says go, that's it. All right. Except for a 1 in a million chance that the engine start and they don't. But anyway.
One out of 85 or so. Yeah. You never know. It could happen. Yeah. With the shuttle. Go ahead.
So can I tell my story?
Were you telling a story? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was telling a story.
Go ahead.
It's all right.
Go ahead. Go.
No.
Jason's going to have his hands full with editing this one.
Good luck. So when they go around and everybody says go, then you think like, okay, I'm really going to go today. It's really going to happen. And people ask me like, well, what did that feel like when you know that today is really the day and those engines are really going to light? And the overwhelming thought in my head at that moment was, oh, thank God I don't have to redo the guest list, because if you don't go, you got to recalculate everything. It's like, okay, who's coming back tomorrow? Is Uncle so-and-so coming back? Because now we got an open seat at the Banana Creek. So is Aunt such and such coming back because they can't sit together? And it's like, oh, thank God I don't have to ever do that again. That was the overwhelming feeling. Not like, oh, I'm about to go to space. It's like, oh, thank God I don't have to deal with that anymore.
So, when we launched people from Russia, I don't think it was the same routine, right? There wasn't a guest list to have to manage.
There still is a guest list, actually, but it's a lot smaller because not that many people are crazy enough to fly all the way to Kazakhstan.
Right.
So I was there with your friend Drew Feustel once. The one launch I saw in Kazakhstan, because I never launched on the Soyuz, but I went there once for a launch, and Drew and I were there just like to get familiar. And we found like the one pizza place in all of Kazakhstan is there in Baikonur, and it tasted good at the time, but I tell you, compared to New York pizza, it's pretty piss poor. But but what do you want in Baikonur, in Kazakhstan? Yeah. But there's still
pizza.
Yeah, there's still a guest list, but it's much smaller. It's a much more intimate affair, and it's not as big of a deal.
Because it's funny, as you get further away from flying, you remember the good. You're reminding me of what it was like with that guest list, because going back to see this launch, and it still was somewhat restricted because of COVID, But there was people there. It was Florida, and people were there. A lot of people had vaccines. You had to show you had a vaccine or whatever, that kind of, or a test to get inside. But it still was outdoors, so they could have people, and it was really great to be able to have people at a launch again. And all these people we used to invite to the launch was great. You had your neighbors from when you were a kid. I had my my elementary school teachers came. It was really fun. And I miss that. I think we missed out on that for the last few years. That, oh man, we're able to have all these people coming. It was so great to invite all these people. But
it's like as a crew member,
you also bring back what it was like to manage that list. Was a pain in the neck.
Yes, but it's also it's like the greatest party you'll never go to, right?
As a crew member, yes, it's true.
Because it's like every single person in the world that you care about, like in the least, is at this party, and you can't go because you're in quarantine, and it's terrible.
You get a phone call. I used to get phone calls. Hey, we're really enjoying your party. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, but you couldn't go. Where did you have? Do you remember where you had your parties, your launch parties that you couldn't go to?
Yeah, the first one we had outdoors in one of the parks there, in Titusville. I forgot exactly where. And then the second one we actually got in Melbourne. There's some convention center that we rented out, and we had it there. And then we had a video hookup for that, so I was able to wave to people and talk to some people.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's your high school teachers are there, all your relatives. It's like the guys that were on your wrestling team in college. I mean, everybody was there, and you can't be there. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I was at your second launch. I was your extended family escort. I remember sitting next to Bueno's mom for that. I was next to your mom for landing, but I was sitting next to Mrs. Good for your launch. So but
what was this one like?
Yeah.
What was this one like?
Yeah, I was going to say it was great to see people again back there, and to have that sort of spirit that we're flying again, and I think it really did make a big difference. I felt for just morale and all the festivities and how cool it was to be flying from the Cape, and I think we really missed that until now that we're launching again from the from the Kennedy Space Center. So and I think the first launch that you were there for the first launch, right? There wasn't very many people there for the first SpaceX launch. Was there?
The first launch was crazy because we were in the height of COVID, right? The beginning. It was May 31st, 2020. And so we were, we had all the restrictions, and we told everybody not to come. Even the family didn't really bring anybody but the immediate family. And I was only there because I was doing the commentary. I was with the press. I was doing the commentary live on CBS. We did a CBS Evening News special report. And, but I had to find an excuse to be there because, I worked at SpaceX for 7 years, and the whole time I'm there for those 7 years, I worked on that vehicle. On
it was your baby.
That was
I don't know if people know this. We haven't gotten into that yet. That's going to be a couple episodes, I think. Just how you got into that whole thing.
The whole SpaceX
so you
story.
Went to see
I worked for Elon Musk. He was my boss. It was a wild 7 years, and this is the culmination of everything that I had worked on. So I was going to be there one way or the other, but I had COVID, so I figured how am I going to get there? So I at that point nobody knew how you get COVID. Is it you have to put Lysol on your Amazon packages? Nobody knew what to do.
Transfer everything from one box to another box.
Right. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm wiping myself with the Clorox wipes. But so the only way I was going to go, I promised my family I was going to do this as safely as I possibly could. So I flew my own plane. I got a little tiny plane, a single engine propeller plane.
Very cool. Oh, I've seen it. It's a very cool plane.
It's a nice plane. I'm very happy with it. It's a Cirrus SR-22. And so I flew that thing all the way from LA to the Cape, to Florida. So I literally flew from coast to coast in this one airplane. And I only
had to make stops. You made stops though, didn't you?
One. I made one stop. And that was not easy to do because it doesn't have that much range. The only way I could, but I wanted to do that so I can I knew this one airport in Texas near Austin where I could land and walk right into a hotel where I didn't have to get into a car or nothing, and I could go right to the hotel and wipe it down with my Clorox wipes, wipe my face with the Clorox wipes, and then everything was going to be okay. So
you stayed overnight? You didn't do it in one?
No,
you stayed overnight.
It took 8 hours of flying to get from LA to Austin.
Oh,
because the plane's
okay.
not that fast. It's not like our T-38s we used to fly. It's not like
Yeah.
it's not a jet. But I could do it without stopping, and I could get there, and I had like a little bag with all my food. I had like cans of chili, or I don't know, whatever. I wasn't going to go out for food. I had like a week's worth of food that I carried with me, and
That's the
so
way John Young. That's the way John Young used to fly the T-38. He always bring a
yes,
sandwich. He didn't want to be dependent on anybody, so you're following right in his footsteps. There.
exactly.
That's a smart idea. Yeah.
But the only way I could get that far is if I fly really high and really slow, because that's when the airplane is like the most fuel efficient, right? Gets the best gas mileage. If I go
max
really
range.
high, max range, and really slow, and so on the second leg, I'm going from Austin to the Cape, and I'm up there, and this is like 8 hours, right? So there's no bathroom. So I have these Gatorade bottles that are empty, and I'm filling them
Not
up.
for long. Don't get them mixed up.
Yeah.
Make sure you check.
Like that's not lemon lime. So I'm flying along. and so here's what's going on. I'm like, okay, if I go any higher, I'm gonna get too much of a headwind. If I go any lower, okay, I'm gonna use too much gas and I'll run out of gas. I won't make it.
No good.
But if I don't go fast enough, I'm not gonna make it there before I'm watching on the radar. I'm watching these thunderstorms coming up from the south towards the Cape. I'm like, if I don't get any faster, I'm not gonna beat these thunderstorms. And then the biggest criteria of all is I'm looking over, I'm like, I only got one Gatorade bottle left.
So you'd have to drink it to empty it and fill it again.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I got all these. I'm doing all this mission planning. It's very complicated, but I got there.
Can you
I
throw it out the window? You couldn't empty it out the window, could you?
No, this plane, there's no window. This plane, you got to open it's like these gull wing doors. If you open that up in flight, it's a disaster.
Oh yeah,
so
no. Yeah, no.
So, but I made it. I beat the thunderstorm. I had enough gas barely, and I didn't run out of Gatorade bottles, so it was okay. So I get there, and I get there to Florida, and of course everybody in Florida is acting like nothing's going on.
Anything happened in tech? So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Everybody's like, everybody in Florida is like, nobody's wearing a mask. They're all in the bars. They're drinking. It's like, they don't care.
What's the problem?
Is there something? Is there what's COVID? What?
Yeah.
So, but I went to the launch and I was there.
Yeah.
I had to be there, and I'll tell you, it was. I remember the first time I watched a launch where I knew the people on board. It might have been your no. It was a little bit earlier than I think your first launch. Mm-hmm. But the first time I knew like who those people were, it changed everything, right? You emotionally, it's a completely different experience.
Kidding. I agree.
And then but this was again a whole nother level because I was involved in making this spaceship.
Yeah.
And so not only did I know Bob and Doug, I mean, Bob and I went to graduate school together. We were classmates at Caltech. And Doug and I, we spent a lot of time together in the office and we're friends. He's a great guy. And so not only do I know these guys really well that are strapping into this rocket, but now I got culpability. If something goes wrong, I'm going to take. It's not just like when we were in the office, we're astronauts, and obviously you and I both lived through Columbia, and it was a horrible, horrible experience. But compared to the trauma that people went through that actually felt guilt because they contributed to what happened, it's a whole different level. So I'm sitting there watching this thing launch with two really good friends of mine that I know, and like feeling like, oh, if this doesn't work out, how am I going to look Megan in the eye, and Karen? Yeah. It's terrifying. I was a freaking mess. I was such a wreck. I was a complete and utter wreck. Is the only way I could describe it.
Yeah,
How are you?
When you were no, well, I was doing it was during COVID. I was asked to do some media for the Discovery Channel with this launch live show, which we ended up doing together for the next launch, right? But
that's right.
But then it was just me on that program, and as far as astronauts go, I think they tried to get Peggy at the last minute, and we couldn't. But everything was done like inside. So this was how are we going to do a TV show remotely like that? I wasn't going to go down to the Cape. I don't know if you remember, Garrett. I was calling you. I think I was calling you from New York about it. You remember that? I think I was calling you, and I had great reception in the tunnel, in the Queens Midtown tunnel. I never lost you. Right now, we're talking with all this technology in the open, and we have trouble. I was in the tunnel. I don't understand how that happened. But anyway, I remember talking to you about it. I was like, you going to go to this launch or what? Because I figured you had the inside track with your SpaceX connection. You're like, I'm not going to Florida. They're crazy down there. They got COVID. I'm not going to go to. Like, oh, you'll be fine. Like, no. Next thing I know, you're going down there. But the way we did it is they brought a bunch of gear into as they did with you when we did it together the next time with the second SpaceX launch for Crew 1 a few months after that. But they came in and they set up all this gear. And so I think I was in contact with you though. I with your pictures and so on was really funny. You sent this really funny picture that you probably want to talk about at some point here. But yeah,
So we I remember the gear you're talking about and I got a picture of that too, which I'll say which we can put up. But of what that looked like, because they sent all this stuff in all these cases, and then you set up like basically a whole TV studio in your house. It was way we got around the COVID stuff.
And I don't know if they told you this, but they were like, we can send a guy to help you set it up. But I was like, I don't, but you're an astronaut. You should be able to figure it out. I'm like, okay.
It's like Neil Armstrong and the
Neil Armstrong
chains.
Before, you talk. They knew I was an astronaut. They assumed too much. So they send all this stuff, and we're trying to send. We didn't want anyone coming in the apartment. Well, because all the COVID, how do you get it? Like you said, we didn't know back in May, and so I set all this stuff up. That was quite a project. There was wiring going through the apartment, and special things for an extra. It was all this new ways to do this with a fancy camera that they could control remotely and all. I think this is the way they did the news. When news reporters were doing the news from home, they had to get a really good signal, and the director had to control so they came in with that same type of gear. So that was my experience with the first launch, was covering it with Discovery Channel from a distance, and it was kind of fun. And you were down there with CBS. But what happened? Yeah. What happened with you? What did you do? You got up to some shenanigans, and I got to ask you, what it was. You were very worried, but you still fit in a little comedy there.
Well, yeah, you were so right. I did. So the first attempt, fortunately, we didn't launch because I was a mess. I really was a complete nervous wreck. And but the weather was no good, and we didn't launch. We never went live on the air for that first attempt. And thank goodness, because if we actually went live on the air, I would have been like this. I would have said nothing, but we didn't go, and it was for me. It was a relief, So I go back to the hotel, and I had a couple of days to kind of collect myself and prepare. When I went back the second time, I was ready. When on the second attempt, which is the time we actually launched. And I remember the first time they drove, I'm at the press site, which is right by that countdown clock, that giant clock with the flagpole next to the vehicle assembly building. So I'm right there at that press site, and they drive right by on the way to the launch pad in the Teslas. Bob and Doug drove right by, and they got the helicopter circling overhead and the whole caravan. And so this time I'm ready, and I took a big piece of like cardboard, and I made a sign, like a big sign, and they drove by, and as they drove by, I'm standing there waving to them, like on the side of the road, like only a couple feet away. They see me and they slow down, right? And they roll down the window, and they're going to shout hello. And I'm holding up the sign. The sign says, "Take me with you." And I think somebody, I tweeted that, and somebody tweeted back like "peak 2020," and get off this planet if you can, because it was a bad year. But
that's true. That had that double meaning. You would want to go anyway. We would all love to do that again. But
I think somebody
that was a perfect time to get off the planet.
They're like Garrett is speaking for all of us.
Yeah, really. Everyone's like, get me out of here. Yeah. How did you get that close to him though? I mean, usually isn't there some? The first time you saw him go by, were you that close again, or did you have to move out to the street?
Look, man, you know as well as I do. You wear this blue jacket, you can do anything. At the cave, you can. I could have. I could have hopped in and gotten a ride to the launch pad probably. I sent them an email once they were up on the space station, a couple of days later, and I'm like, and I sent an email. I was like, "Did you see my sign?" And they wrote back, they're like, "Yes." I'm like, "I wasn't kidding. Why did you stop?"
Why didn't you stop? There was 4 seats in that thing, Garrett.
I know.
You could have fit in there.
I know. I was ready.
No,
I wanted to go.
no, that's funny.
But so,
Yeah,
how would you compare, like watching the Falcon 9 launch compared to watching the shuttle? Because you saw both.
Yeah, I got to ask you this because it was, I've seen a bunch of launches. This was a night launch, and it seemed to me, and maybe this was just the angle or whatever, but it seemed to me like with the shuttle, it would go up, right, and you would kind of lose it. You wouldn't see it for very long. Now this was at night, so you can see it longer at night. But it also seemed like even the angle. This I don't get. The angle seemed like with the shuttle launch, it seemed to kind of go straight up and very high, and then off. It might have been where I was viewing it from. I think the stands might have been in a different place. It seemed like the SpaceX vehicle was kind of going not as high, maybe a little flatter, and when it was, but and I could see, you could see it the whole time. We could still see the flame. And I'm wondering, there's a question for you, maybe, which maybe isn't very funny, but there's a difference in the fuel, right? They're using oxidizer and methane. Is that what is that what they're using?
No, they're using methane. They're using that in the Raptor engines for the Starship, but Falcon 9 is LOX kerosene, RP1.
Like kerosene.
RP1
Okay, right.
LOX,
okay, thank you. So thanks for covering me on that too. So kerosene. I know, but at Hubble on Shuttle we had oxygen and hydrogen, and so I was wondering, maybe was it something to do with the way the fuel burned, that with Shuttle, when the shuttle, with the shuttle, if you didn't rub it in,
you're just twisting.
I'm
that
sorry,
knife,
I'm trying not to say that, but with the space shuttle, because it was hydrogen, that maybe the way the flame burned, that it doesn't burn away, or you don't get the same light coming off. I don't know if that makes a difference.
I think,
but it just seemed that you were able to see it for a long time.
Now, I think the reason you're able to see it for a long time actually wasn't because of the different fuel. I think it was because of the lighting conditions. So one of the unique things about that particular launch, is it launched at night, but relatively quickly it got, because it's flying to the east and flying up high, relatively quickly it got into the daylight. So dawn broke on the spacecraft well before you were still in pitch blackness, but the sun was shining on the Dragon and the Falcon 9. So that lit the thing up for you and allowed you to see it for a longer period of time. You probably did you see all the cold gas thrusters as the first stage was coming back?
It was unbelievable. The first stage came back, and we were able to see that coming back, and the little poofs coming down, and so we could see both lights. We could see the light of the second stage taking them to orbit, and right more or less coming down, we could see the first stage returning with its poofs of light and the way it scattered the particles in the atmosphere. It was it was a great show.
Yeah.
But I felt like with the shuttle flights, I guess a little louder, a little more vibration because of a more thrust, bigger rocket ship. But with this, it was really a show.
Yeah.
It really was something to see. It was spectacular to see those two lights. You sort of was a day launch, of course. Did you have the same effect? Did you still see it for that long, or did it disappear more quickly?
I don't think. I think it disappeared more quickly because because it was a normal day launch. So I don't remember seeing it for that long. But I do. But but the other thing that's unique about the Falcon 9 launch is that the first stage comes back and lands. Out in this case, it landed out on the drone ship out at sea.
Yeah,
and the shuttle shed the solid rocket boosters.
Right, you saw them flare off. Yeah,
but you just get like you see a little bit. But this is the first stage of the Falcon 9 is it lights up those engines for the braking burn and the landing burn, and there's a shock wave that comes off of it. So that's and the one that you saw. If you get really lucky, which you did, and it's right like before dawn or right after dusk, then you get this really interesting lighting configuration. And this happened once. We launched a Falcon 9 out of Vandenberg, and so right like just after the sun went down. So again, it was dark here, but when it went up, it got into the sunlight, and so all of those attitude control thruster firings and engine lighting was visible, and it looked like this massive jellyfish in the sky over LA. People were like crashing their cars. There were accidents on the LA freeways because people were looking up and distracted by it.
Wow.
They thought like the aliens were attacking or something, and people were freaking out. 911 was, people were dialing.
Really?
Yeah.
Especially in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It seemed like they would. But the jellyfish looking thing we saw in the distance that you're describing coming down. It looked like that's a good way to describe it, I think. But we weren't underneath. So I guess in LA they were underneath it and they saw it kind of on top of them. Is that what was happening?
Yeah, it lit up the entire sky here in LA. That was crazy. Now, I was in mission control in Hawthorne at SpaceX when we were launching, and a couple of us were like, we might be able to actually see this thing with our own eyes instead of watching it on the screen if we go up to the parking structure, because it's launching from Vandenberg, which isn't that far away. Maybe we can actually see it visibly. So a bunch of us went up to the top of the parking structure in Hawthorne, and then we're like, holy crap! We're like, whoa! I can't believe it, and it was incredible.
Yeah, it was really quite a show. I mean, I felt like as far as what you see, it was like a light show, and maybe it's because we got right but it was really worthwhile and going down here and being with everybody was cool. We got a chance to go in the hangar for the waiver cross. The waiver cross is when you get a chance to see the crew member that's invited you to the launch, and it's family wave time, and we couldn't do that outside because it was bad. So we went inside the hangar more, where the space where the rockets are, and it was like a scene out of a science fiction movie. We weren't allowed to take any photos in there, but it was really cool to see those rockets getting ready. I guess they're the ones that are going to be next up.
We should describe the waiver cross as something that goes way back. But there's this big trench that goes around the launch pad, 39A and 39B. The big launch pads where the launch pad that you saw the Falcon 9 launch from, 39A, is the same exact launch pad that the shuttles launch from. It's the same exact launch pad that the Saturn V launched from. And Apollo 11 launched from that same launch pad, for example. And so there's this ditch that goes around the outside, and you can see this in Apollo 13. If you ever watched that movie, they recreated this scene very well. And what they do is it gives you a safe distance, so that it's like a quarantine, like social distancing, right? You want to keep a certain distance so that nobody can get sick. And the crew stands on one side of that ditch, and you bring up you're allowed to pick like 50 people, including your closest family members, that could come on the other side.
That's another list that pisses people off.
Yes.
You got to tell these people. This is what you're doing, but you can't tell anybody about it. They should outlaw all pictures.
Because if you're guest number 51, you get screwed. So
that's it,
right?
And how about this one? Did you ever get this one? Well, if my mother can't go, I'm not going.
Yes,
did you hear that
of course.
You ever get that one? If so and so,
I'm not going. If so and so,
I'm not going. Right, exactly. You get
such
that
a pain
one.
in the ass. But so I'm there for mine. I remember two of the wives of the Columbia astronauts, Rona Ramon and Lonnie McCool, were there. And they walked right across the ditch. They screw this, and they came across and they hugged me. And the NASA officials and like the NASA flight docs are like, they don't know what to do because it's a complete breach of protocol. It's a complete breach of the quarantine. But this is the widows of the Columbia astronauts. Nobody's going to say no to them, right? So they came right across there hugging me, but then. So my mom is over there. My mom. I gotta tell this story.
So she wasn't allowed across the ditch, probably, your mom.
No, she wasn't. And she's jealous now. She's mad because she sees Rona and Lonnie.
See what I mean? Not only you invite him, now who gets to touch the crew?
The touching thing.
No one's ever happy at these things.
So my mom is like, I'm there with you. You are allowed to have the only people that can go through the quarantine, except for Lonnie and Rona, is like your spouse, right? Your spouse is with you, and because they're cleared by the doctors into the quarantine.
Yeah.
So I'm there with my spouse, and my mother is across the ditch, and she's trying to take a picture, right? So she's trying to orchestrate this. She's like, Simone, stand closer to Garrett. I can't get you in the same frame. Closer, bend down a little bit. Just bend down a little. And she's driving me crazy because I got 50 people over there, including people I haven't seen in like 10 years. Like my high school physics teacher or whatever. And I'm trying to wave and shout to them because it's kind of far, and I'm just and she's yelling at me to move over to take the picture, and she's driving me crazy. So she's yelling. I'm trying to, and eventually I'm getting so like frustrated. I said, "Mom."
That's good. That's really good.
So,
right before you launch into space, in front of everyone.
So
they don't know the backstory like we do.
So I come back to Earth after that mission. That was my last flight. I come back to Earth, and Doug Hurley, as in Bob and Doug that flew on that mission we're talking about, the very first flight of the SpaceX mission. Doug Hurley is the astronaut support personnel who is driving me back to crew quarters after we land. The shuttle lands, and we get into the car, and he's driving me in the car, and it's just us. And I'm telling him the story about the wave across the ditch and how I flipped off my mom, like right before I launched. And he goes, "You realize that if something would have gone wrong, if you would have mortared, that would have been the last thing your mom ever saw of you. It would have been you."
Yes, yeah. This is how I remember, Garrett. That's the thanks I get. This is the thanks I get. It wouldn't have been, "Oh, we lost Garrett." Yeah, well, you know what he did.
That's how,
This is the thanks I get for raising him and making him an astronaut.
I'm like, too bad I'd be dead. I won't care. I'm not gonna ever know. I'm not gonna ever have to deal with it. I'll never have to take the guilt because I'll be dead.
If he was still alive, I'd kill him.
Right.
Yeah. Funny. No, I remember. I remember when you came back. I was your extended family escort with your mom during the landing.
I know.
And she didn't mention anything about the finger, but now I can see why she wanted to get you back.
She probably was in denial and kind of blocked that out, or maybe she was so busy trying to line up the photo that she didn't even notice. But she's going to know now. Now she knows.
Yeah. Now she knows what you did. Now you're in trouble. But I remember we went out to eat with you guys. Let
me try to dig out of the. Hey, Mom, I love you. I love you. I really do. I'm sorry.
But still, what you did at that time.
For crying out loud.
We went out to eat with you guys after, I remember.
Yeah.
And we were at the Cape, those, whatever those. I was just by there for the launch. That's the other thing I did. It was like a stroll down memory lane. I went down to the Cape Canaveral where they have those, those restaurants we used to go to. It used to be called Lloyd's. I was like, everything has a different name now. Oh. Like Lloyd's, they changed the name years ago. It's Fish Lips or something like that. I think that was what. Yeah.
Right.
So I think we might have been there at one of those places down there, and it was great to see. I remember I saw you on the runway when you guys landed. I was on the bus I was sitting next to Bob Cabana, and we came out, and we, as you say, I'm asking you how you got next to those guys on a thing. I was there seeing you guys on the walk around after. I remember that, and then we got together to eat. A bunch of us with you guys, and I remember you're still wearing Joe Torre's ring. This is not the baseball episode.
No, we got.
But I remember you were wearing that.
Save that.
But I remember you were wearing that. But it was great great to be there for you guys launching in for your landing, and that was really cool. But it's still, when you're working it and you're there, and it's a little bit different than the experience I had last week, because we're not an astronaut anymore, and going there. And I really wanted to go through that experience, as we just bought our tickets online like you normally would. We went on the tour, the family tour, and my son and Dan was with me. We went. We saw Space Shuttle Atlantis, which was on display there, and it was just a great week. It was great to be there with my son. Great to be there for Megan, to see her family and be a part of that, and to see how cool it is to be launching again from the Kennedy Space Center, and see a lot of the guys that are still there that we knew, that we flew with. There was an ESA astronaut was there, so there was some ESA people there as well.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a wonderful experience. I had so much fun. It was one of the best trips that I've ever been on, and it just made me so happy to have been a part of it, but also to still be a part of it, and at least knowing the people and doing what we're doing to support in the way we do it now. So it's really great to be launching again from the States.
Fantastic.
And I have a lot of questions I want to ask you.
We went 9
I have a lot
years.
of questions I want to ask you that we have to save, I think, for another. We're about out of time, but go ahead. I'm sorry, Garrett.
I was going to say we should wrap this up, but we went 9 long years without launching from the Cape, and it's great it was fantastic to be there and see it start up again, just like you're saying. So
and it's great to see the people. I know you were saying, like, when you were there with Florida, when you were there for the first launch, but there probably wasn't very many people on site to watch. But now there were people there again, and people in the hotels, and seeing people from SpaceX, the crews, some of the crews that are going to go in the future, the customers, the customers that are going to go. They were there, and a lot of other very interesting people that we've known from our past that are now involved with the commercial end of it were there. So, but I have a lot of more questions for you. So I want to ask you about what I saw in the training of it, and because I think that's really changing. I think the way we do business is not just how we get to space, but I think how we train for space too with this automated spaceship. It seems to be to me it just hit me so much different. So we have a lot to talk about. But that said, I think we're going to wrap it up, Garrett. We're done. Your son has a drum lesson coming up, so we got to get off before he starts making noise.
Yeah, so he's starting up.
I don't hear it. Can we hear some of it? Is he any good?
No.
Is he playing the drum kit? Is he playing the drum kit?
He's got these electronic drums that he hooks up to the amplifier. Yeah.
So can he put a headset on and no one else hears him?
He can, but he takes a lesson over Zoom, so he's got to play it so that the instructor can hear on the Zoom. So we should get going. But
so really quickly on my son's drum set, Nico McBrain. You know who that guy is?
No.
He's the drummer for Iron Maiden. And I wasn't necessarily a fan of their music, but he came in for a tour and they asked me to show him around, and I became friends with Nico. So I told him my son was a drummer. He goes, "I can help you pick out a drum set."
That's nice.
Yeah, that was nice. It was great. He helped us pick out this set. It was this great Ludwig set, But he told us to order this one kit that came with 2 bass drums.
Oh.
And one of these bass drums was gigantic. It was really big. And he goes, "Well, this is if the lad," he's English. He goes, "This is if the lad wants to make some noise."
Oh.
So we set this thing up and he starts playing it, and we can hear it in the house. I was like, "This is great." And then went out to walk the dog, and it sounded like bombs were going off. Like the whole neighbor, I don't know why, the way we set it up, but it was like over the garage. So you might want to look into that. Yeah. Entertain the neighbors. They'll hate you. But you won't. You can have some peace in the house. All right.
Right.
Drum lesson has started, I guess.
Yes.
Time to go.
All right, man.
All right, man.
See you next time.
Have a good evening. See you next time, folks. Thanks. 2 Funny Astronauts. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Bye, everybody.